Welcome to Outside the Lines First Report. Nearly a decade ago, the Sacramento Kings were the class of the NBA. And last Wednesday could have been the swan song for a franchise with one of the most loyal and devoted fan bases in the NBA.
There's a lot of uncertainty, as we all know. But the one thing that we do know is the love affair between this team and this city.
Another line has been drawn between the emotions of a city and the business of basketball in what's becoming a common theme in the NBA.
Oklahoma City with a hard-fought win in Game 1.
This past weekend, 3 relocated franchises, Oklahoma City, Memphis, and New Orleans, won their opening round playoff games. Teams of promise. That begs the question, is it success or is it money that motivates uprooting a franchise? Today on Outside the Lines, hearts versus heads, loyalty issues in the NBA.
And now, sitting in for Bob Lee, John Saunders.
And welcome back to Outside the Lines. The NBA opened its biggest showcase this weekend as the playoffs began in spectacular fashion. But it did so with the possibility that the next 2 months may be the last NBA basketball we see for a long time. A lockout looms that could shut down the league. But for one city that has rabidly supported the Kings for 25 years, Sacramento may have seen their last game ever.
Look at a Goon squad. They are into it early as Dante Green with Pooh and Jason getting everybody going.
I'm here with Kevin Johnson, the longtime NBA great, who is now the mayor of Sacramento. Are you confident that somehow there's a Hail Mary here, or have you accepted the fact that this team's in Anaheim moving forward?
I don't have a guarantee, but I'm going to go back to the NBA Governor's Board meeting and really build a case on why it makes sense for Sacramento to remain an NBA city.
Kings have the lead. You could not write a better ending to what's happening right now in Sacramento. Bryant, three-pointer, the tie. 4.8.
Here's Thornton against Kobe Bryant.
And why not? Let's play 5 more. Let's stay here all night and all summer. Just keep on playing. 99-99. D'Alembert, loose. Pau Gasol, Fisher. And that's going to be a 3-point attempt. And it's all over in Sacramento. Paul Westphal saying thank you to the fans, as he should, and we all should.
Well, I'll tell you. Let me catch my breath here. There's a lot of uncertainty, as we all know. But the one thing that we do know is the love affair between this team and this city. And tonight, we say so long.
And let's welcome in our panel of experts right now to talk about this seemingly terrible situation. First, the voice of the Sacramento Kings for the last 23 years, Grant Napier. And player agent Lee Steinberg, who was involved in trying to keep the Rams in Los Angeles. President of Horrell Sports, Rick Horrell, and columnist for the Sacramento Bee and ESPN contributor Marcos Breton. Now, Marcos, let's begin with you. For those fans that are around the NBA and around the rest of the country, they may not even know what's going on in Sacramento. Is this a foregone conclusion the Kings are gone?
It's not, John. This is a situation that I don't know that we've seen before, in that the NBA playoffs are going on right now, and there is a playoff going on for an NBA team between 2 cities, Anaheim and Sacramento. It appears that after last week, the NBA Board of Governors decided that Anaheim doesn't appear ready, and there's still questions as to whether Sacramento is viable as an NBA city. So they're going to take 2 weeks as a lockout looms and as the playoffs unfold to try to determine which city can host an NBA team. So in a sense, Mayor Kevin Johnson, the former NBA star, is suiting up again and is in playoff basketball again, this time trying to keep the team in Sacramento.
Well, Lee, you're in an interesting situation. I want to bring you in here now because you were part of a faction that tried very hard to keep the Rams in Los Angeles. You failed at doing that, but as a Southern Californian, what is your reaction to the chance of Sacramento moving to Southern California?
I also was instrumental in saving the San Francisco Giants in a very similar situation. Everyone had given up. Everyone thought that it was fait accompli. But I felt it was wrong to pull that franchise out of the hearts. You know, teams say that they're part of the civic fabric, that they're a critical part. They're your Los Angeles Lakers when it's time to ask for civic funding, when it's time to ask for support in bad times, and then turn around and say they're private businesses. I love the Maloofs, but we were able to save the Giants. We were able to save the A's, not so successfully with the Rams. And I would very much like to see another team here, but on the other hand, not at the price of breaking the hearts of the fans of Sacramento who loyally supported that team.
Well, which brings in Grant, because you were so emotional after that game, and you could see the emotion on the fans as well, and the coaches and the staff and the players. Does this deserve to happen to Sacramento? They supported the team so well for so long, but for the last few years, they've been at the very bottom of fan attendance.
Yeah, you know what, John, though, this situation here in Sacramento is not about the fans. Everybody knows, the commissioner knows, the owners know that the fans here are great, and they have been great for 26 years. This has nothing to do with the fans. This is about one thing and one thing only. The building that the Kings currently play in is outdated. It's antiquated. You're having top concerts like U2 and the Rolling Stones, the NCAA, all saying no, that this building is not up to standards. This comes down to one thing and one thing only. New building, the team stays. No new building, the team leaves. It comes down to that and that only.
So, Rick, let me ask you, as somebody who's been involved in many financial situations and doing in the world of sports, what does it take? What would it take for Sacramento to get a new building put up in Sacramento?
Well, John, I could be flip and say it all depends on money, but we all understand that. Ron Burkle, the stand-up and potentially be an owner, he owns the Pittsburgh Penguins, a Northern Californian. Kevin Johnson probably can out-jump shot any mayor Anaheim has to offer, but it's also a public-private partnership issue, and California really hasn't had the success of putting public-private partnerships together today or elsewhere. The other piece of this is LA is a 13 million person market, as we know. You divide it by 3 teams, even if they do go, that's 3.5 to 4 million people. It's still twice as many people as Sacramento, but having that cherished civic asset, the Kansas City, Omaha, then Sacramento Kings, by the way, for 26 years, it's hard to decide how to handicap the next 2 weeks.
Now, Marcos, I've done a lot of NBA games in Sacramento, and one of the standards is the Maloofs sitting about 2 seats down from you when you get to call the game, and they're so emotional, so involved in the city, so involved in the cowbells. This just doesn't seem like it's in their character. Is this something that they are forced into a position of? Because there are rumors out there that they have tremendous money problems.
Well, there are rumors, John. No, they do. There's a loan outstanding that the Kings have with the city of Sacramento. If they leave Sacramento, they would have to pay $77 million. We know that if they move to Anaheim, they would be loaned $50 million by Henry Samueli, the owner of the Anaheim Ducks. There have been media reports that they are in deep with their lenders, with their Las Vegas casino, and reports that the Kings have borrowed substantially from the NBA. And so that creates, I think, the pressure point in this situation to where they are seemingly forced to make this move, that their margins are so tight that the relief of some infusion of cash from Henry Samueli and the potential of a larger TV contract makes it doable. Now, the problem with that scenario, and the problem that the commissioner spoke to the other day, is that there is no TV contract yet done, and we all know, those of us who've been in and around television, that rights deals are very, very difficult to complete, especially when you have a gun to your head, especially when you have to do it in a matter of weeks. And so those are the issues that need to be worked out, because it seems that the owners and the financial situation, the pressure the owners are under, is what driving this situation.
And Leah, I talked about just how poor the involvement of the fans are as far as attendance has been over the last 3 years, in the bottom 2 or 3 the last 3 years. But have you found, in your experience, that when a team talks about moving, the fans start to move away?
It has a chilling effect, which it did with the Rams. It had a chilling effect with the Giants. It had a chilling effect with the A's. It dispirits fans. Remember, part of this is an artificial conceit. We tell fans that a private business is part of their civic fabric and they owe an obligation to support it. And then all of a sudden it talks about moving, which is difficult. You expect fans to support a team in the tough times. The irony here is we would have 3 NBA teams, 2 baseball teams, 2 MLS teams, and 2 hockey teams in Southern California, and no football team. And the reason we have no football team is because 2 of them left. We have to be very careful here. The Maloofs are great owners. I went to school with Kevin Johnson, who's a terrific person. The problem is that if we want to keep professional sports healthy, we need to give fans the certainty that as long as they show up and as long as you can somehow fund that team will stay there. It's not a corner drugstore. Otherwise, we really undercut the whole concept. This area, Southern California, can amply support the team. Henry Samueli is a respected leader here. You probably have 13, 14 million people who can drive to the pond within an hour and a half. So it can support it, but what about Sacramento? What about the hearts and minds of the Sacramento folks? That's what scares me.
Grant, how much of this...
And John, if I could just interject real quickly, attendance went up in this case when the word came out that the Kings were potentially moving. Attendance actually went up here, and I think it speaks to the passion that people continue to have. They weren't dispirited. On the contrary, people have been mobilized to try to keep the team here, and it's a major consideration going forward.
Grant, obviously the hardcore group of fans is there. There's no question about it. But what is the feeling around the entire city about the move?
I think the city is divided. I think it goes back to what we've talked about. You know, for the last 10 years, the Maloofs have tried to get a new building in Sacramento, and this city has not been able to deliver. They don't have a good track record when it comes to sports in this town. They couldn't even build a AAA ballpark here. It had to go across the river to a different county. Here's the bottom line, guys. Let's not forget in the last 2 years, the Kings won 25 and 17 games respectively. So I really can't come down on the fans for not showing up. The product was not as good as it's been in the past. I don't think it really had anything to do with the rumored move. And as Marcos just said, the attendance really did pick up in the last month. There were a lot of civic rallies, a lot of these fans banding together, you know, having significant sellouts at certain games to draw attention to what was going on. Again, guys, I think we just need to keep focused on the situation. Mayor Johnson went to the NBA, promised a few things. One of those things was a new arena. Now he's got 2 weeks to deliver. Everybody in this town has their fingers crossed that he's going to be able to deliver on those promises.
All right, you 4 gentlemen, don't go anywhere. We're going to get back to you in just a moment. But first, the movement of the franchises in pro sports, of course, nothing new. Most recently, the Seattle Sonics left for Oklahoma City 3 years ago. Jason Reed, a longtime Sonics fan who documented that move, has some advice for Sacramento fans.
Even though all the chips are stacked against you guys, I'd say don't give up hope. Even if you lose the Kings, it's not a done deal. You have Kevin Johnson as your mayor, and if you lose him, it might just be some years before you can get a team back to that region. But it's going to take fixing the arena. So if you really want to save the team, fix your arena, build a new one. If not, you're probably going to lose the team.
So Jason Reed joins us now, the director of the movie Sonicsgate that chronicled the leaving of Seattle's team that so many people supported. Do you believe that the NBA tells the truth to the franchises and to those civic fans?
Well, I think that the NBA set a dangerous precedent, basically saying that no team is safe. If the arena is not generating the proper revenue, they will move the team to another market, and that's exactly what happened in Seattle. They claimed that Key Arena was not creating the revenues necessary to support the team. Howard Schultz sold the team to Clay Bennett, and they were off to Oklahoma City. So I think the NBA is definitely not doing the best things in the interest of the fans.
We did ask the NBA to be part of our show today. They declined, but I continue by asking the question, how much of this, though, is on the fans? I mean, I see you with your jersey on that's still showing that you have the support for Seattle and the Sonics that no longer exist, but they have to buy the merchandise, they have to watch on TV, they have to attend the games, and they also have to vote in taxes to support better buildings. How much of that is on the fans?
I mean, Seattle supported this team for 41 years, 3 generations of Sonics fans. We were loyal to our team. The last year they were in town, the team was the worst in franchise history. So I think that they really are not respecting the fans, and we stood up and supported the team. We led a movement to save the Sonics, and ultimately the fans' voice wasn't heard by the league, and they moved our team to Oklahoma City.
They moved your team. As a fan in Seattle, are you okay if a team from another city comes your way, say New Orleans?
Well, the whole reason that we made the movie Sonicsgate and got the story told about how Seattle was robbed of its franchise was to bring the NBA back to Seattle. So as Sonic fans, the whole reason that we're still speaking up 3 years after the team leaving is to bring the NBA back to our market. We want to bring back the Sonics. If it means that another franchise has to relocate here, that's the dangerous precedent that the NBA has set by saying that no team is safe and we can move them to a different market. So if it happens to be the New Orleans Hornets, then we'll gladly accept them as the Seattle SuperSonics. But that's just the situation that they've put the fans in. The NBA has created this problem by moving teams in a heartbeat. So bottom line is we just want to bring back the Sonics to the city of Seattle.
So let's bring our first 4 guests back in, and Rick, I'll go to you first. We saw the situation in the National Football League where Baltimore lost their franchise to Indianapolis and had to steal one from Cleveland. Is this something we're going to see more and more of? Because we've seen a lot of movement in franchises in the 4 major leagues.
Well, John, as someone who's worked in the industry for, might be 100 years, steal is a very difficult term to swallow. If it were a widget company and localities were offering tax incentives to take widget company from point A to point B, it wouldn't be this kind of discussion. I would also tell you that the added history is that, if you remember, I was involved in that whole MAPS plan in Oklahoma City where the voters decided to approve 9 buildings in 1993, including a sales tax for a new arena, which was not built to bring an NBA team in. It happened to be ready for one because the financing was taken care of for other civic reasons. And so Clay Bennett is part of the relocation committee, and he'll understand what it means to play one against another for the appropriate benefits. A city can lock a team in by a long-term lease and put the public-private partnership together, which also has significant community good. And again, your question about can you bring in another team, would you accept it? It's all about protecting civic assets with the appropriate lease. You only have to look at what Oklahoma City's excitement has after the Thunder win Game 1 to understand they made a great investment, and now it's Seattle's turn to step up in their context as well.
Lee, is it a good time to be talking about moving franchises when you're also talking about contraction and facing a lockout?
Well, I think that this market can clearly support the team. There are huge numbers of basketball fans. You have extraordinary numbers in Southern California of big corps that are willing to go ahead and buy season tickets, buy the luxury boxes, do the sponsorship, do the naming rights. So clearly there's no problem. But the central problem is once you start moving franchises from place to place, then it becomes very difficult to get fans to attach a artificial concept, which is rooting for what ostensibly is a pro franchise or private business. It's not like a college you went to or a high school you went to, and putting all their loyalty behind that. We were able to save the San Francisco Giants, as Rick suggested, by getting a ownership group together and getting the right facility. This may be too little, too late. And you hear the pain in Jason, who, if you haven't seen that film, it's a marvelous film. But I think we need to think about the fan. Remember, the competition for the NBA is not labor versus management. It's a competition with the NFL, with the National Hockey League, home box office, and every other form of discretionary entertainment spending. We have to think about how do you maintain the fan base, and you don't do it by ripping franchises out of fans' hearts.
We've only got about a minute left, guys, so I'll ask each of you to comment very quickly on this. When I was younger, we rooted for players. Free agency changed to that, and now you root for uniforms. Are we in a state where now you root for the city and whatever team happens to be there? Marcos?
This city
In this
right
case,
now, and there's 2 weeks. There's 2 weeks to go here in this city. I don't know what's going on around the country, but one thing you have to distinguish, no disrespect, I have all sympathies for all these other cities. This is the only show in town in this city. If this franchise loses, this becomes a minor league city.
Marcos?
I would add to that if this city loses, I think the NBA loses. This is a market where the NBA is king. It's not just Sacramento. It's from the Central Valley, Modesto, all the way to the Oregon border. They own it. And this area is depressed economically right now. There's double-digit unemployment, which has contributed to some of the struggles that have been going on in the business community. However, the city's unequivocal in wanting the team to stay, and it would be a terrible thing if the team did leave.
Jason, what would your reaction be to that? Are we cheering now just for cities and not for teams?
Well, here in Seattle, we're cheering to bring back a team to our city. So I think, you know, I'm definitely rooting for Denver in the playoffs this year to knock out OKC. So we root against OKC now up in Seattle, and we root to bring back our Seattle SuperSonics.
Lee Steinberg, we have a different sports fan, without question, than when we were growing up years ago.
I grew up on the Dodgers and the Angels and the Lakers. They meant an enormous amount to me. My father took us to the games. His father took him to the games. That chain, father to son or mother to kids, is critical. You have to nurture it to keep professional sports alive.
All right, guys, thanks a lot. And a lot of people grew up rooting for the Brooklyn Dodgers and the New York Giants. Now, today's guests, we want to thank them: Grant Napier, Marcos Bertone, Rick Horrell, Lee Steinberg, and Jason Reed. Thanks a lot.
Outside the Lines First Report.